Maya stared at her ceiling fan, lying on her back on the bed. The rhythmic click-clack of the blades was the only sound in her cramped apartment. It had been exactly 14 days since she walked out of The Hive, a marketing firm that specialized in crushing souls. Her old boss had been a loud toxic, the kind who yelled about coffee temperatures and stole credit for every slide deck Maya stayed up until 3 a.m. creating. When she finally quit, she felt a brief rush of power, followed immediately by the crushing weight of reality. Her bank account was a desert. She closed her eyes, trying to ignore the stack of overdue bills on her nightstand. The silence was heavy. She missed the work, but she didn't miss the toxicity. She wanted to grow, to lead, to build, not just survive. Suddenly, her phone vibrated, skittering across the nightstand like a frantic insect. It was an unknown number from a high-end area code. "Hello?" she whispered. "Maya Sharma?" The voice was crisp, female, and sounded like it cost $1 million. "I'm calling from the executive office of Apex Dynamics. We've reviewed your freelance portfolio. Are you available for a final interview with our CEO tomorrow at 6 a.m.? Maya sat bolt upright. Apex Dynamics wasn't just a company, it was the crown jewel of the tech world. "Yes," she breathed. "I'll be there." "Good. Don't be late. Mr. Sterling doesn't believe in second chances." The fan continued to spin, but the air in the room suddenly felt electric. The headquarters of Apex Dynamics was a monolith of black glass and steel that seemed to pierce the morning clouds. Maya arrived at 5:45 a.m., her heels clicking nervously on the polished marble floors. The lobby was silent, smelling of expensive air filtration and high-end espresso. There were no live, laugh, love posters here. Everything was functional. Everything was elite. She was whisked up to the 90th floor by a silent security guard. When the elevator doors opened, she felt like she had stepped into the future. The office was minimalist, overlooking the entire city as it began to wake up. "Mr. Sterling will see you now," a woman at the desk said, not looking up from her holographic display. Maya walked toward the massive double doors at the end of the hall. Her heart was a drum in her chest. She pushed them open. The room was freezing. Behind a desk carved from a single piece of obsidian sat Elias Sterling. He didn't look up. He was reading a physical document, a pen in his hand. He was younger than the magazine suggested, with sharp features and eyes that looked like they were made of blue ice. He didn't greet her. He didn't offer a seat. The silence stretched for a full minute, thick enough to choke on. "You're 30 seconds late for my personal clock," he said. His voice was a low, resonant growl. He still hadn't looked at her. "The elevator took longer than—" "I don't care about the elevator. I care about the result." Finally, he looked up. His gaze was an X-ray. "Sit." Maya sat. She felt like a specimen under a microscope. Elias Sterling didn't ask her about her hobbies or her 5-year plan. He threw a tablet across the desk. "That is a failing subsidiary in Singapore. You have 10 minutes to find the leak in their logistics budget. If you find it, you're my personal assistant. If you don't, the exit is behind you." Maya's hands shook as she took the tablet. This wasn't an interview, it was a battlefield. She scrolled through spreadsheets and shipping manifests. The numbers blurred, but she forced herself to focus. Her old boss had made her do this for months, sorting through his messes to hide his mistakes. She knew exactly what to look for. At the 9-minute mark, she pointed to a recurring line item for consultant fees that didn't match the output reports. "Here," she said firmly, "it's an internal kickback scheme." Sterling took the tablet back. He glanced at it for 3 seconds. "Your desk is outside these doors," he said, already returning to his paperwork. "My coffee is 180 degrees Celsius. If it's 179, I won't drink it. If you speak to me unless I ask a question, you're fired. Clear?" "Clear," Maya replied. Her blood transitioned from fear to a strange cold spark of ambition. She walked out. He didn't even say goodbye. She was now the right hand to the most powerful man in tech, a man who appeared to have no soul. The first week was a masterclass in psychological endurance. Elias Sterling, or the block of ice, as the floor staff whispered, was the most efficient human Maya had ever seen. He might have also been a ghost. He never said good morning, he never said thank you. He communicated almost entirely through 3-word emails. Fix this. No. Now. Maya's job was to be the buffer between him and the world. She turned away angry investors, handled his precise caloric intake, and managed a schedule that would have killed a normal person. The workplace wasn't unfriendly in the way her last job was. It was simply vacuum sealed. There was no gossip, no small talk, and no room for error. It was the opposite of the toxic chaos she had left behind. Here, the only thing that mattered was the work. But the isolation was starting to get to her. She felt like a ghost haunting the 90th floor. She would spend 12 hours a day 3 feet from a man who didn't seem to acknowledge her humanity. By Friday, she was exhausted. She had performed perfectly, yet Sterling hadn't given her a single nod of approval. He just kept moving, a machine made of suits and high-frequency trading. She began to wonder if she had traded one kind of hell for another, the hell of being bullied for the hell of being invisible. Maya sat at her desk at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. The office was dark, except for the light from Sterling's office spilling through the glass. He was still in there. He was always in there. She thought back to her old boss, Mr. Henderson. Henderson was friendly to your face while he was stabbing you in the back. He'd buy the team pizza while forcing them to work through the weekend for no pay. He'd call Maya sweetie while telling the board her ideas were his. Elias Sterling was the opposite. He was brutal, but he was honest. He didn't pretend to care, but he never stole her work. In fact, she had seen him credit her in a memo to the board. Data compiled by Sharma. Accurate. It was the first time her name had ever been on a winning report. But the coldness was a different kind of poison. She felt her personality shrinking. She was becoming as silent and sharp as the obsidian desk. She missed laughing. She missed being seen. She watched him through the glass. He was staring at a monitor, his brow furrowed in a rare display of something other than indifference. He looked tired. But before she could process the thought, he snapped his fingers, the signal for her to bring in the next file. The machine was back online. The second week hit like a freight train. A major product launch was failing in Europe, and Sterling was on a warpath. He hadn't slept in 48 hours, and his demands had reached a level of absurdity that made Maya's head spin. "The Tokyo feed is lagging," he snapped as he walked past her desk. "Why?" "It's a localized server issue in, I didn't ask for a diagnosis. I asked for a solution. If I wanted a weather report, I'd look out the window." Maya bit her tongue so hard she tasted copper. She fixed the feed. She rerouted the servers. She handled the fallout. But by 2 p.m., she felt a familiar heat rising in her chest. It was the same heat she felt at her old job, the feeling of being a punching bag for someone else's stress. She needed to vent. She took her phone and slipped into the small, soundproofed kitchen area down the hall. She dialed her best friend, Sarah. "I can't do it, Sarah," Maya hissed into the phone the second she picked up. "He's a monster. He's not a man. He's an actual block of ice. I thought my last boss was bad, but at least he was human. Sterling is a robot with a god complex. He doesn't speak, he barks. I'm just a glorified Siri to him." She paced the small room, her voice rising with every word. "And the worst part," she continued, her voice trembling with frustration, "he thinks his silence makes him a genius. It just makes him a jerk, a high-tech, well-dressed jerk who wouldn't know a human emotion if it hit him at the speed of light." She let out a long, shaky breath, feeling a tiny bit of the pressure leave her chest. "I'm going to give it a month, Sarah, just for the resume. Then I'm out. I can't live in a refrigerator forever." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "Maya?" Sarah whispered. "Is someone behind you?" Maya's heart stopped. The air in the kitchen, already cool, suddenly plummeted to sub-zero temperatures. She felt a presence, a heavy, looming weight that she had learned to recognize over the last 2 weeks. She slowly turned around. Elias Sterling was leaning against the doorframe. He had a coffee mug in one hand, and his expression was unreadable. It wasn't the coldness she was used to. It was something sharper, something darker. He hadn't been in his office. He had been getting water, and the kitchen wasn't as soundproof as the brochure claimed. Maya's phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto the counter. Her face went from hot red to a ghostly white. "The report on the carpet stains," Sterling said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I'll expect it on my desk by 5, along with the Tokyo projection." He didn't yell. He didn't fire her. He just turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the silent hallway. Maya didn't move for 3 minutes. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty doorway, her mind racing through every possible outcome: termination, lawsuit, blacklisting. She eventually forced her legs to move. She walked back to her desk, her head down. She felt exposed, like she had walked into the office naked. She had insulted the most powerful man in the industry to his face, or rather to his back, and he had heard every single word. She waited for the summons. She waited for the security guard to come and escort her out. But the double doors stayed closed. The afternoon was an exercise in pure agony. She typed, she filed, she organized, but her eyes kept darting to the glass. She could see him. He was working as if nothing had happened. Was he waiting for the end of the day? Was he enjoying her suffering? She thought about her old job again. Henderson would have made a scene. He would have humiliated her in front of the whole office. Sterling's silence was different. It was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of the room. By 4:55 p.m., Maya's hands were shaking so much she had to sit on them. She had the Tokyo projection ready. She just had to deliver it. She stood up, took a deep breath, and knocked on the obsidian-colored doors. "Enter," the voice growled. Maya walked in. Sterling was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the sunset. The orange light caught the sharp angles of his face, making him look like a statue. She placed the folder on his desk. "The Tokyo projections, Mr. Sterling, and the other report you requested." She had actually written it, a one-page memo on efficient maintenance of office textiles. It was a gamble, either a sign of her wit or the final nail in her coffin. Sterling didn't turn around. "You think I'm a robot?" It wasn't a question. Maya swallowed hard. "I think you're very focused on results, sir." "Don't pivot," he said, finally turning to face her. His blue eyes were piercing. "You said I wouldn't know a human emotion if it hit me. You said I was a jerk." Maya squared her shoulders. If she was going down, she was going down swinging. "I was frustrated. You don't offer feedback. You don't offer anything. It's hard to work for a result when the person you're working for doesn't acknowledge your person." Sterling stared at her. For the first time, Maya saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Not anger. It looked like surprise. "I don't hire people for their feelings, Miss Sharma. I hire them for their minds. Your mind is excellent. Your feelings are a liability to the timeline." "Then why am I still here?" she asked, her voice bolder than she felt. "Because," he said, stepping closer, "you're the first assistant in 3 years who hasn't cried after I heard them complaining. Now get out. We have a board meeting at 7 a.m. The next morning, the atmosphere had changed. It wasn't warm, but the ice had become transparent. Sterling was still strict. He still demanded 180-degree coffee, but he started doing something he had never done before. He started explaining why. "The Tokyo feed isn't just a technical glitch. It's a political move by the local provider. We don't fix the server, we buy the provider. Prepare a buyout brief." He was teaching her. Maya realized his no-nonsense attitude wasn't a lack of emotion. It was a shield. In his world, everyone wanted something from him. Everyone was looking for a weakness. By being a block of ice, he stayed protected. She stopped being afraid of his silence. She started to see it as a space where she could prove herself. She worked harder than she ever had before, But for the first time in her life, she wasn't doing it to avoid a lecture. She was doing it to earn a seat at the table. She also noticed the little things. He didn't eat lunch unless she put it on his desk. He forgot to hydrate. He lived on adrenaline and data. One afternoon, she walked in and placed a bottle of water and a protein bar next to his keyboard. He didn't look up, but as she left the door, he spoke. "Sharma." "Yes, sir." "The water is room temperature, correct?" "Yes, sir." "Good." It wasn't a thank you, but it was the closest she'd ever get. And strangely, it was enough. 3 weeks later, the world fell apart. A massive cyber attack hit Apex Dynamics, threatening to leak the personal data of millions of users. The office was in a state of absolute panic. VPs were screaming, security teams were scrambling, and the stock price was plummeting in real time. Maya stood in the center of the chaos, watching the VPs crowd into Sterling's office. They were all talking over each other, shifting blame, their voices rising in a frantic, toxic chorus. It reminded her of her old job, the noise, the uselessness of it all. She looked at Sterling. He was sitting at his desk, his hands folded. He looked like a stone in a rushing river. He wasn't saying a word. He was just watching them. Suddenly, he stood up. The room went dead silent. "Out," he said. The word was a scalpel. "All of you. You're making noise. I need solutions." The VPs scurried out like frightened mice. As the last one left, Sterling looked at Maya. He looked truly exhausted. "The encryption key is hidden in the 2014 archive," she said softly. She had been digging through the files while they were yelling. "I think the attacker is using an old back door from the original build." Sterling froze. He looked at her, then at his screen. He began to type with a ferocity she had never seen. "If you're right," he muttered, "you just saved this company." "I'm right," Maya said. For the next 6 hours, they worked side by side. No titles, no coldness, just two people fighting a fire. At 3 a.m., the attack was neutralized. The servers were secure. The company was safe. The office was silent again, but it wasn't a different kind of silence. It was the silence of a shared victory. Maya slumped in the chair across from Sterling's desk, her blazer discarded, her hair a mess. She was too tired to care about protocol. Sterling pushed a button on his desk. A small, hidden compartment opened, revealing a bottle of very expensive scotch and 2 glasses. He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid and slid one across the desk to her. "I don't think assistants are allowed to drink with the CEO," Maya joked, her voice hoarse. "I don't have an assistant. I have a partner who happens to manage my schedule." Maya felt a warmth spread in her that had nothing to do with the scotch. He was looking at her, really looking at her. "You were right about one thing," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "I am a jerk. I've spent so long building this fortress that I forgot how to speak to people who aren't trying to take it from me." "It's a nice fortress," Maya said, smiling, "but it needs more windows." He actually chuckled. It was a low, rusty sound, like a machine that hadn't been used in years. "Maybe. Just don't tell the staff I laughed. I have a reputation to uphold." The weeks following the Great Thaw were the most productive of Maya's life. She wasn't just handling his coffee anymore. She was sitting in on high-level strategy meetings. When a director tried to talk over her, Sterling would simply raise a hand. "Let Miss Sharma finish. Her insight is why we're still in business." The toxicity of her past felt like a bad dream. She realized that strict wasn't the same as cruel. Sterling held her to an impossible standard because he held himself to the same one. He expected excellence because he knew she was capable of it. She had grown more in 2 months at Apex than she had in 2 years at her old firm. She learned how to negotiate, how to spot a lie in a balance sheet, and how to command a room without raising her voice. But she also learned about Elias. She learned that he'd built the company from nothing after his father's business failed. She learned that his ice was a response to a world that had tried to burn him. She found herself protecting him, not just because it was her job, but because she respected him. And in return, he started to protect her career, carving out a path for her that led straight to the C-suite. One afternoon, Maya was headed to the lobby for a meeting when she saw a familiar face. It was Mr. Henderson, her old boss from the toxic marketing firm. He looked smaller than she remembered, his suit a bit too shiny, his smile a bit too fake. He was waiting by the security desk, looking nervous. When she saw Maya, his eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. "Maya, sweetie, I heard you landed a job here. I'm here for a pitch meeting with the procurement team. Why don't you put in a good word for your old mentor?" Maya stopped. She looked at him, the man who had made her feel like she was nothing. She felt no anger. She only felt pity. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice calm and cold, a perfect imitation of Sterling. "I remember our time together very well. I remember how you handled your team. And because I remember, I'll be personally reviewing your pitch." Henderson's smile faltered. "Oh, that's great." "No," Maya said, leaning in. "It's not. Because at Apex, we don't reward noise, we reward results. And based on your last 3 quarterly reports, your results are inefficient." She walked away before he could respond. She didn't need to yell. She had the power now, and she knew exactly how to use it. That evening, Maya returned to her office. She found a small box on her desk with a note in Sterling's precise, minimalist handwriting. For the partner who found the windows. Inside was a high-end encrypted tablet and a formal offer for the position of chief of staff, with a salary that made her old dreams look small. She walked into Sterling's office. He was at his desk as usual, but when she entered, he actually closed his laptop. "Well?" he asked. "The coffee was 181 degrees this morning," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "I think you're getting soft." Sterling leaned back, a genuine smirk playing on his lips. "Don't push your luck, Sharma. You have a department to run now." Maya looked out the window at the city. 2 months ago, she was staring at a broken ceiling fan, wondering if she had a future. Now, she was looking at the world from the top of the glass tower. She had escaped the toxicity, she had survived the ice, and in the process, she had found exactly who she was meant to be. She wasn't just an assistant, she wasn't just a worker, she was a force of nature. "Ready for the 8 p.m. briefing?" she asked. "Always," he replied. The machine was running perfectly, but for the first time, it had a heart. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire, teach, and entertain. Until next time, bye!